I'm Bobby Adcroft. This is my podcast, Be Real Now. My guest is an international musician, writer, singer, and TV personality. His music and live performances are engaging, entertaining, and educational. Raised in Scranton, he is one of 6 biological siblings in a family that included literally dozens of foster kids. He's a graduate of Scranton Prep. In college, he triple majored in English, history, and pre-med. A graduate of the University of Scranton, he further studied at Thailand, where he was awarded 2 Fulbright scholarships. He published several papers on political history and pursued his appreciation for entertainment and people, finding the common ground that connects us all, music, the universal language. He is a global ambassador for causes and culture that today continues to enlighten us. He is Todd Lavelle. So my guest today is one of the most unique persons I've met, I could safely say, in my entire life, after just listening for over a tray of pizza and a couple drinks. Todd Lavelle. Todd, we just had a tremendous conversation at our kitchen table about growing up in Scranton. And one of the things that resonated with me is when you talked about the difference between and utilizing gifts and talents.
Skills.
I got it. Gifts and skills. Tell me a little bit about that.
Thank you. And thank you, Bobby, for opening your home to me and for opening your family, because I'm here through your son, Joe, who showed interest in my work. And we did a show the other night, and I'm reading people as I'm performing, and when there's a lot of storytelling involved, I'm looking at whose attention is there or not. And your son was riveted, was listening. And to me, that is a great honor and a great basis for friendship, collaboration. Like, oh, you can work with that guy. Because that's, in my work, that's what you need. Skills and gifts, I think it matters at times. It's not semantics. Because skills come with attachments, I believe. I'm sorry, gifts come with attachments, meaning debt. So if we've been growing up with a sister a year apart who's deaf and autistic, and my father, since the time I was a little boy, I was 5 years old, singing in his minstrel, and my father said, "You're singing for 2 people, remember that, because she can't sing, so you're supposed to sing."
That was your gift.
And guess what? She has things and knows things that can be gifts for you, but you have to learn to listen. And so Greenridge Little League, sitting up on the mound behind the field, and my sister telling me in sign language, listen to the butterflies singing, watch the grass grow, and being laughed at or made fun of by other kids for that, but having this father that said, like, they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's, you find that. And having to write it out with her to understand it, that is gift/skill.
Yeah.
So the gift is, given this special person, the word specially abled has real meaning, the specially abled person. And then the skill is that I actually would sit and listen, and I actually would go through the process of trying to hear a butterfly sing. And little did I know that skill would become my living. I write and create and manage things that many other people maybe just look past.
And yeah, you're a songwriter, you're a musician, a composer of television, movies and series, etc.
Yeah. So growing up talented, having these talents, Bobby, is it's a weight. It's a weight. So going through school and knowing I could be a doctor, I could be a lawyer, I could be an actor, I at least had the minimal skills, gifts to do it. Mm-hmm. And my father was a tortured soul in that sense. He was an Olympic trial diver. He was a football player, basketball player. He was a tremendous actor. He won nationals in public speaking in 1955. I won the same thing in 1985. But it tortured him. And he died young because he began to see everybody else as dumb or, They don't get it. They don't, and it's lonely. And I made a promise looking at him as he was dying that this was my best friend. And I said, I'm not going to do it this way. I'm gonna remember how to laugh, and I'm gonna remember that I'm dumb in many areas. You know, I can't do carpentry like a lot of guys. I can't, whatever.
But
And
Todd, how old were you at that time?
I was 18. My dad died when I was 20. And I think, Bobby, as a father, maybe you feel this. You're handing off the baton all the time, in that you've done it pretty well to a certain degree, and then you're tired, or you hand it to your kids, and then it's amazing to watch. Oh, they can run,
Yeah.
like better than me. And I believe very deeply in a very practical immortality. Or I've kind of lost my belief in a God or religion, but my faith has just grown, and my faith is in love, in a very practical sense. In that I don't want to die, you don't want to die. So what do? Well, we hand off to people around us and after us. I call it culture, and culture is just a vehicle of love. It's just. Would you please remember me? And every time they remember you, you're alive. In a very practical sense. So my mom died 4 years ago. In front of my house in Bangkok, I have the Garden of Shirley, and every day when I go do something, I take her with me. And I guess a couple psychiatrists might have a good time with it, but I really feel like my mom's with me. I'm happy.
Yeah, she is.
And
that energy is absolutely with you.
so my life and work are, I feel like I'm a conduit often, not the owner. I never say, we just published 400 songs with Warner Music, and they big letters, they say owner of, and I said wait, I never felt like the owner. I used my hand to write these songs, but they come from places I can't even tell you about. They're smarter than me.
But in the credits of those assets, those songs, it says Todd Lavelle.
It does, and I hope one day they'll make money for people that worked hard on them. But we were walking up the steps, and I told you, we work with this kind of network of respect, Bobby. We do these world music festivals. And we're not rich, and the people that do things with us are not rich so often. And there's a beauty in that. When you take away all of what I call the bullshit, like all the things that get in the way of really knowing each other. And I think Americans have a lot of it. Americans carry a lot of baggage. My hunger is just deep inside. I want to know you with this limited time I have, and maybe in some way inspire or collaborate, or very, very greedy, practical feelings about how do we use this time, love, presence that we have to do something good. And
it's working, Todd.
Thank you. But in the act of all that, Bobby, there is this very visceral happiness. And I think happiness in itself is a science. How do you digest happiness? How do you, what's for free? And the tragic thing about America, or many, many places you might say that are developed, is people who are content and happy don't buy a lot of stuff.
Right.
And that's not good for businesses, because the economics are built on that mean word, growth. It's not okay to just be making a living. You got to grow. And grow means victim. It means you got to take resources from somewhere. You got to, the bottom line is, I'm interested in that deep happiness that you might inspire someone to see or create in their lives. And with my time left on the planet, that's all I want to do.
The happiness that resides within you.
within you, and then the excitement of sharing it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm 58 and I get really excited in every day.
Yeah.
Yesterday teaching my niece to play ball, and she finally, like, her jump shot looks pretty good.
Yeah.
And I will take that excitement, take it meaning digest it.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, go home and, you know, write in my journal that I taught my niece. That's another dose of happiness, free,
Yeah.
squeezed out of that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like there's an efficiency here in the way we digest happiness. And I think the media in America definitely is against that, because that means you don't buy stuff.
Yeah.
You know, if you're content and you're okay.
Yeah.
So briefly, for listeners, I'm sorry to be out here on planet Mars with these ideas. Very basically, I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, on Penn Avenue, what they call Germ City, like the tough part, in between Pine Brook and Greenridge. So Greenridge started around St. Paul's.
Yes. Yes.
And those were all like good-looking people and correct, and but we were on the other side, and grew up in this house. My parents, having a special daughter, began to take kids in to watch her at times, and then my father started this minstrel group. I was 5 years old.
Wow.
We blackfaced 2 years before it became illegal. 1970, you couldn't blackface anymore.
Right.
But we had an old, like, black field holler spiritual.
Yeah.
And when I got older and realized what a gift, you know, I had 200 songs in my pocket when I was a little kid. I could sing all the field hollers. Chicken in the bread by picking up dough, chicken in the bread by picking up dough. I looked over Jordan and what did I see? When I was a little bitty baby, my mama would... And these were, again, gifts.
Yeah, that's a gift.
And then when 1970 came, he changed the show to this American Young, he called it.
Yeah.
And in that group of ours, Bobby, was, I'll say, 30 kids that started to not only practice together, some of them would come and stay at our house. Like, hey, can we stay the night? And at that time, there was, the drinking laws in Pennsylvania, New York differed. New York was 18, PA was 21.
Yeah.
You may remember as a young person driving across the border.
Oh, down 80, up 81
Right.
to Binghamton,
And
New York, yeah.
a lot of people died.
Yeah.
And my father said, all right, you know, 16, 17-year-old kids. He said, you can drink, but you don't leave this house. So, and it was this little house, rear 1326 Penn Avenue. So we had mattresses. We'd lay down at night.
Yeah.
And then we'd sleep all together. But what happened with all that was, then the talking starts, then the music starts, and in that little group of 30 people, there were like 2 All-American football players, and there was a guy that taught me about writing. He would bother me about writing. His name was Michael King. If you know Sex and the City,
Of course.
or Two Broke Girls, that's Michael
Wyoming
King.
Avenue, yeah.
Right.
His mother, Eleanor, worked at our family donor
Oh,
shop,
okay.
Krispy Kreme, yeah.
So her sister-in-law would be Mrs. King from Penn Avenue.
Okay.
And she was the seamstress for our show, and they had like 9 kids. Well, at that time, everybody in Scranton had at least 9 to like 14 kids. You know what I mean?
They did.
And this show grew, and my father started to take it. We started to go around the country. We'd go to convalescent homes. We'd go to resorts, and imagine you're 9 or 10,
Yeah.
and you're singing and meeting all these different kinds of people.
Yeah.
And it's school, you know, it's schooling. And then I went to prep. And when I went to prep, this foundation of knowledge and the hunger for knowledge that my parents had given us and these older kids had given me.
Yeah.
And remember, that was Vietnam. And the beauty of what happened during Vietnam, if you weren't a victim, was the arguments were visceral. This was a real crack. And I laugh today when people say, you know, we've never been this divided. Really? Were you around in 1972? Because it was divided. And my father was on the side of Nixon and you don't question this shit, and this is, the government's good. And around me are all these older brothers saying, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
And I had an older brother who was a CO, like a conscientious objector. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. I think Muhammad Ali was.
Muhammad Ali was.
Yeah.
And
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was, I believe.
Jabbar was.
Changed his name, yeah.
Mike Hanley, who became the director of United Services here in just retired. And he would argue with my father, and being, as a kid, it's like the Clash of the Titans, like, whoa, what did he say? What did he say?
Yeah.
And I began to ask, how do you know? Oh, well, read, there was no internet then, read this book. And my father at one time saying to me, Jesus Christ, all you do is ask questions. Read goddamn Will and Ariel's Durant's History of Civilization.
Yeah.
And I said, I got mad. I will. And I found it, and it's, if you've ever heard of this, it's like 10 volumes, And I just snuck in my attic, and I was going to read the History of Civilization until I could argue with them about Vietnam.
Wow.
And one of Mike's friends deserted to Canada. He wouldn't go into the war.
Yeah.
And my father was livid. Like,
how can you do this?
how can you do this to us? Why you don't believe in your country? And August 9th, I believe, 1974, Nixon resigned. And my father's world cracked.
Wow. Watergate got to Nixon, of course.
And we're all sitting around my father, and Nixon's resigning. And I said it was like Tom and Jerry when he gets hit and cracks inside.
Yeah.
And my father just broke down, crying.
Yeah.
And he's yelling, Mike, where is that? Where's your friend? I want to apologize. I can't believe we've been duped. My generation's been duped. He's walking around the house. We've been duped.
Oh.
And then he made me, find out who's McNamara and why, and then I got excited about it.
Sure.
To understand where's this from?
Yeah.
How do we get to this point where, and went to prep and had these wonderful Jesuits and smart people. Bob Bergman, who lives down the street, taught history and inspired me to read history.
Yeah.
And then to the University of Scranton, where it was like times 10.
Yeah.
Brilliant priests who just knocked my head left and right. Why don't you know this? Why don't you read this? This kind of thing. And at the time I worked all through college, Briar Sunoco.
Yeah. Music Street. Yeah.
Right behind your old Krispy Kreme store. That would be Wyoming and
Scranton Plumbing.
Yeah, and there was like a little shop
Poplar Street. Yeah.
that did chemicals.
Okay.
I worked cleaning those chemical barrels. I probably have all kinds of, I'll have a green head in a few years or something. And then I went to the U.
Yep.
And because I was paying for my own education, I was, you could even say, arrogant about what I studied. Mm-hmm. And I took pre-med, history, and philosophy, like these three majors.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to learn.
Yeah.
And I became an honor student sophomore year.
Yeah.
Which meant you could create your own classes. So the first thing I did was I said, I want to understand Vietnam. So I took this, year course, but in the middle of it, I said, geez, this is all American points of view, isn't it? What do Vietnamese guys say?
Wow.
So I started writing letters to the Vietnamese government in Hanoi.
As a sophomore in college?
Yeah. I said, I want to know, and again, enablers.
Yeah.
Like, this young man does what he does because you enabled him. You know what I mean? One parent might say, what are you doing? Get a job, sell cars.
Right.
So these priests, I'm thinking of Father Masterson, who didn't even like me, but he enabled me. Like he said, okay, if you want to do it, you got to read these 12 books first. The history of, you have to read Ho Chi Minh's prison diaries.
Yeah.
And you have to read this and this and this. And the hunger just grew.
Wow.
Like, whoa, hey, and then I wanted to know more. So I said, can I study Asia? And they laughed in 1983. Like, what? Asia? Yeah, where's Asia? Isn't that right past Manuka?
Yeah.
So I did my own readers in Chinese language, in Chinese history. So I wanted to go, Parenti, this great man at the U, who groomed kids for Fulbrights and really did not like me, said, Lavelle, you're Fulbright material.
Yeah.
And we started to prepare to go to China, and China announced like a ban on medical students.
Yeah.
So I said, well, what's second best?
Yeah.
And I was a stoner in college. I got stoned now and then. I didn't drink.
Yeah.
Because I played once in a while at Scanlon's bar.
Right.
Like we did shows.
On Mulberry Street, yeah.
And I said, this drug sucks. Look at these people. They got cigarettes in their ass.
Yeah.
Like, what's this? And stoners were total opposite. Like, we would climb mountains and read Greek to each other.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah.
So I said, why is marijuana illegal? And Dr. McDermott, this wonderful woman at the U, said, there is the beginning of research in marijuana, but it's still a class 1 drug.
Yeah.
But we can do it. And we did a year project on the effects of alcohol and marijuana.
Yeah.
This is 84.
Wow.
And I was livid, Bobby. Like, wow, look at this. There's no effect. And alcohol doesn't miss an organ. It hits every organ.
Yeah.
Why? And then I began to think, wait a minute, the system maybe isn't so...
Isn't so good.
And she said, if you want to know herbs, you go to China or Thailand.
So you studied biology then?
So I did my Fulbright, and medicine is probably the most competitive Fulbrights.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, what can we do here? And then I thought, wait a minute, what if they invite me? So I started writing to all these professors in Thailand who I didn't know and saying, your research is fascinating. I'd like to be part of it.
Yeah.
And I got invitation letters.
Yeah.
And so I won the Fulbright.
Yes.
And went to Longhorn University to study herbs at the School of Pharmacy.
Yeah.
And when I got there, Bobby, they were expecting a chemical genius, and I wasn't. I was a pretty good student. So I embarrassed. We'd go out with these mountain healers, go up into the mountains, and they'd do the rub downs on a Wednesday. Like patients would come up to their huts, they'd put water on them, rub them down, and then feel pulse and say, okay, this is kidney, it's holistic.
Yeah.
And then the doctors would go like 2-3 days up in the mountains to gather herbs. They had satchels, and they would just gather from the forest. And feeling bad that I didn't know a lot of big town chemistry.
Yeah.
I became leaf collector, and I would climb any tree, and I would do anything.
Yeah.
And it became one of the great herbal doctors. Took me on like a son. He gave me, people call me Tongdee.
Yeah.
Todd Tongdee. Tongdee means good gold.
Yeah.
And he gave me the name.
Okay.
But he had a hair lip. And so we're up in the mountains one day, and he turned to me and he said, Todd.
Yeah.
Todd.
Yeah.
Todd.
Yeah.
Todd Bandino. Todd is a bad name. And I said, oh, well, give me a name. And looking over this stunning valley, he says, Todd Tongdee. Tongdee, right?
Yeah.
And I was all excited. I had a Thai name.
Yeah.
And I went back to Bangkok, told my professors, I have a Thai name.
Yeah.
Tongdee. And they said, there's no word in Thai, Tongdee. And it took them like 3 days till one of them said, wait a minute, that guy has a hair lip, right?
Yeah.
He's trying to say Tongdee.
Yeah.
So these mountain doctors did not like the idea of city researchers isolating things from their herbs. Like they said, that's impolite.
Yeah.
It's the entire thing that you do. So I became the go-to guy. They could send me up to any guy. These mountain doctors liked me. And for me, it was just 2 years. They extended my Fulbright 2 years. And at the end of the Fulbright, Bobby, I had to go get medicine herbs in a refugee camp. And I was fascinated by, this is the result of the Vietnam War. This is the war I was learning about at home.
Yeah.
Here's the refugees from Cambodia, from Vietnam, the Hmong people.
Yeah.
Maybe you've heard Air America. Like the CIA had their own little airline.
Yeah.
And they were using these Hmong people to. So anyway, I was fascinated by the refugee camps.
Yeah.
And finishing my Fulbright, the UN said, you want to work? We'll make you a staff development officer. So I worked in the refugee camps for 2 years. And working there, seeing a lot of crazy stuff. Why do the Khmer Rouge hate the Khmer Dance, whatever?
Yeah.
They said, you want to do another Fulbright? So they gave me another Fulbright to sneak into Burma and spend a year with minority groups studying the military's fight against these minority groups.
Wow.
And
So I'm kind of surprised you didn't go into herbal medicine.
me too. So in the middle of all that stuff, my Thai had become fluent, and I spoke dialects like the mountain dialects that I was hearing, and a group, a political singing group, asked me to jam, and I did, and I had promised myself no music. I'm going to be a doctor, you know. As we talked about earlier, having many skills it's you know, tears you apart inside sometimes. And I sang with this one group, and
They loved it.
they did, and
Yeah.
they took me to Japan. We went on tour, and they were a group that were part of the revolution. They used music to create a revolution in 1976.
Wow.
And I myself, my mind going back to my father and using music to transform people's lives was like, whoa, this is the real deal.
This is medicine.
Yeah, this is medicine.
Medicine for the heart, yeah.
That's brilliant, Bobby. No, really, it.
Yeah.
And what you just said, I thought to myself, a lot of sick people are in hospitals, and to be a doctor is a great thing. But I think there's even more sick people in bars, in restaurants, in pretending they're okay, because the recreation you take on, what you do with your free time, is not a separate issue from your real life. Supposedly, it's part of your life. Like it makes you who you are, I think. So if you could have good music or positive music or performance or media, you can be part of healing people. Or as we were talking about downstairs, going upstream and preventing problems before
They start.
like, what if you could inspire self-awareness, just that little bit, for people to question who they are and what they're doing? Well, then they're less susceptible to media onslaughts, or you know what I mean. They have a higher EQ, emotional quotient. They're so anyway. I saw the power of music, and I began to sing, and because my Thai was fluent, I became this big thing, like a TV thing, and then a movie thing, and really famous.
Yes.
And all the record companies came and said, all right, you cut your hair, you shave the beard, and we do love songs, and we make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I don't wanna. I really want to tell the stories of the countryside that I'm seeing.
Wow.
And I got called, you know, everything, a fool, dumb, traitor, whatever. And I just began to make this music that was, at that time, we didn't call it world music. It was world music, Bobby. I was telling the stories of different places and using instruments from the local area, combined with what I grew up with. And that album, Thailand Inside Outside, I self-published, became like a hit.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And I didn't have a company, so it was my money.
Yeah, no, one of the greatest, perhaps one of the greatest musicians ever in Thailand. Yeah, yeah.
And with my background having a special sister, I started to use a lot of disabled musicians, many blind, physically disabled. To me, they were just added color. The way they saw music was different.
Yeah.
And
they felt the vibration.
It grew into this. Yeah, it grew into this project we called Rhythm of the Earth, and it took me 2 years. I combed the country for every color of music, and writing these stories. I was writing at the same time while I was doing this, writing columns in the English and Thai papers.
Yeah.
And then doing a lot of TV shows.
Yeah.
Where they would want me to go on as like a superstar guy. And I would always bring along, oh, here's my band of 10 blind kids, you know.
Wow.
And it really pushed a lot of boundaries. But there was no festival for it, and there was no real TV show about it. So two things happened right, almost at the same time. I said I want to do a world music festival. And people just said, nobody wants to come here, African guys, or, Tuvan throat singers. And I said, I think they do. I think you're not offering. I think people are lazy about their entertainment. They take what's in front of them. So if you put, a Jimmy Fallon on 100 times, even though the guy's maybe not really that funny, but every night, what do? You just sit there and go, it's Jimmy.
Yeah.
What if it was like Wacko or Billy or something
Yeah.
who would disturb your existence? You might actually take that in. So I only had one person who believed in me, the owner of Sing-A Beer, big beer company. And he said, I'm with you. What do you want to do? I said, I want to do world music. He said, I don't give a damn about music. I want to sell beer. I want to do a world barbecue.
Yeah.
So we created the Rhythm of the Earth World Music, World Barbecue Festival. And this is 20 years we've been doing it.
Wow.
And it's kind of the signature festival in that part of Asia. And it just grew. And all those disabled musicians we'd worked with.
Yeah.
I said, instead of us doing little foundation shows where we're playing to the choir,
Right.
let's bring everybody in front of a bunch of beer drinkers who are willing to listen to anything.
Yeah.
And that just grew.
Yeah.
So 3 stages, and then bringing performers from all over the world. It's all, much of it is word of mouth. Some of these guys are Grammy winners, but they talk to each other. And if they feel that they've been treated well, respected, So I'm very greedy about time, stingy about time. So we'd get them for a week, and I'd say, would you go to a university with us in the daytime? Would you go to this disabled foundation in the daytime? Listen, I'll write a song, your music, and could we do this? Could we do this? Could we do this? And that just grew into these albums of music, into other young people doing their own projects much better than me.
Truly a universal language.
Yeah, it is. It is. And Jerry Trapper, who in my dad's minstrel group when I was 5, he was 12, and we had a little skit called the Harmonica Cats. I wanted to play harmonica, and there were like all these big guys. Michael King was one of them.
Yeah.
And they didn't want me to play. So the joke was they would grab me. I was a tiny kid.
You're a 5-year-old kid, yeah.
Yeah. And they would throw me across the stage to each other. Try him. And Jerry Trapper, when we grew up, Jerry Trapper was a teacher in the area for 30 years. So he's a great harmonica player. So I brought him to Thailand 4 or 5 times for festivals to join.
Wow.
And at our biggest festival, place is packed. There's 10, 12,000 people there. And I'm thrilled that my older brother is standing, because I always wanted people in Scranton to see this.
Sure.
This is, so much of it comes from where I grew up.
Yeah.
And I said to Jerry, what do you think of this World Music Festival? And I said, are you impressed?
Yeah.
And he said, no. He said, this is just the Lavelle house on steroids.
It's so well put.
This is just what we grew up with.
Yeah.
And that grew into, those festivals became, the government then started to ask, I had to have a company to do it.
Yeah.
Staff. And every time we would bring people to work part-time at a festival, Bobby had maybe 300-400 people that come work a festival.
Yeah.
I would insist that I bring them through an orientation process, teach them why I'm doing what I'm doing, where it all comes from, who these people are.
Wow.
So they're all getting educated in this. Some of them didn't want it, but some of them did. And then the government came to me and said, well, would you, instead of a festival, would you do a symposium, like heavy-duty stuff?
Ooh.
I said, yeah. It's not much different than music, is it?
Sure.
So we began to do these international symposia on women's rights, gender equality.
Wow.
So we do a lot of things like that with and for ministries in the Thai government and the UN. So with UNESCO, we're doing a project now on gastronomy, like food, in this one town that wants to be a UNESCO city of gastronomy. So what we do is go in, look at resources, human resources, natural resources, and say, okay, what do you got? What can we do? And then go to my bosses and say, are you with me on this? And create something, often with, academic at the core, but with a shell of entertainment, to soften it a little bit.
Right.
Like when we did, a funny thing was we did the East Asian Ministerial Conference on women's rights and gender equality. And it's 40 nations, Bobby, and I knew we were in, the point of it after 5 days was to get a declaration. What do we all agree on?
Really?
And the subject came up of non-traditional family, meaning
perfect.
Meaning, gay, queer, whatever. And here I am with Muslim countries, Catholic countries.
Yeah.
And it was like wall
together.
after wall. Are you in on this? No.
No.
Oh, no. And it was, I have my bosses, kind of breathing down my neck, the ministers, saying after day 2, everybody's nice, everybody's enjoying each other, but they're not they're not okay with this. And
What happened?
I said, let's give me another $10,000 and let's do a river cruise. And
Literally on the river? A cruise?
So, bunch of wine, really good Muslim entertainment, Catholic entertainment. Some drank, some didn't, but everyone was like pleased.
Soften them up.
And in the middle of that, I brought out what I called this mixed bag performance troupe.
You really opened their hearts.
And inside of it were transsexual, all the colors.
Yeah.
And I had a few of them mention where they're from. I grew up getting beat up. I believe in God, but I don't see why I'm bad that I'm homosexual, right in the face.
Yeah.
But beneath the veil of entertainment.
Yeah.
And
wow.
Yeah, and the next day we talked again, and they signed, this kind of MOU that we need to push this.
Yeah.
And
that is love.
We're doing another project right now that came from that with something called the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN. Biden, 2 days ago, was at the meeting because the U.S. has been out of Asia for too long, and Biden's trying to get us back into. It's a 10-nation group, Bobby, that does economically. It's very strong, and we need to do business with them, that kind of thing. But so I mean, music can do that, or the possibilities. So that's,
that can unite the world.
It can, and I, at the Chicago concert with Chris Spiker a couple of weeks ago, the Bloomsburg Fair, and it was wonderful. And I turned to him and said, "Isn't it funny that we grew up with a lot of religions, and to me, they were not teaching unity. They were there's some good things in them, but." Look at this religion we had from the beginning. We had this thing called music, which is a completely proactive experience. Like you pay or you do something to get there. And then for 2 hours, you share without ever thinking about sin or is somebody bad or somebody good. You just focus on this, and it's not even, I don't believe it's just having a good time. It's this intrinsic need for community.
Can I tell you something, Todd? It reminds me, when you say that, I think of my stay at Sloan Memorial Kettering Hospital a few years back. And this one particular day, I could barely lift my head off the pillow. And I had music therapy sessions twice a week. Get a knock on the door. My wife was with me the whole time, and she said, "Oh, it's your music therapy session. Could you do it?" She said, I jumped up. "Yeah, get me my sheet music. Yeah, come on in." And within 10 minutes, it was as if I was cured. I was singing and dancing and having a great old time. Yeah.
So you must have had a lot of conversations with death.
Yeah.
On that journey.
Sure.
how did your feelings about death develop? Like from, I'm sorry, I don't know how long you were sick. When did you get it?
You know what? It was November of 2018, right around Thanksgiving, and I was fatigued. I was extremely fatigued all the time. My wife and I go for a walk every day, and we'd go for our 3 mile walk, and half a mile in, I'd say, I got to sit down, I'm tired. She found that very peculiar and got in touch with a doctor for me to get blood work. And when the oncologist saw my blood work, I remember he said to me, I don't know how you're standing up.
Really?
You have something and it's very bad. And this is an oncologist, so I thought, oh dear, I'm in trouble. And within a short while later, I was diagnosed with a rare form of leukemia, myeloplastic syndrome. And originally they said, you got a couple months to live. When you first heard that, you kind of reject it and don't believe it. But it was a very short period of time after that I accepted it. I was like, you know what? I had a phenomenal life. I married the dream of my life. I have 6 incredible kids. At the time, we had 7 grandchildren. We have 8 now. I was like, I'm okay. But it was my MD here in Scranton, Dr. Linda France, said, that's not okay. You can't just say that. These people love you. You have a lot yet to contribute in life. Mm. So I bought into that. I thought, you know what, you're right. I do. I have a lot to do. And one of the things that I thought in that time was doing, interestingly enough, a podcast, talking to people, listening to people, hearing stories. So, that's nearly 3 years ago. Thank God. All has been well.
When you said I was okay with that before that doctor.
Yeah.
What did you think death was? Like what did you picture? You die and it's over?
No. I believe in the Einstein theory of and I may not be saying exactly right. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed, just transformed. So to me, it was, I'll be something else. My energy will be there, and I'm okay. This was good.
And then when that doctor said, but you got to live for these people.
Well, I felt like I was being selfish when I said, hey, I'm good. I had a great run. I felt like, you know what? I could contribute to a lot more people. And
they need me.
They need me, and people love me and care about me. That I made my mind up that I'm not done. I have a lot more good to do. Mm. I'm a prayerful man, and I had that come to Jesus type of talk with myself, saying, you know what, God, I could do a lot of good. I believe I'm a good man, but I could do a lot of good.
I mean, the way you must be living now,
it's a gift.
Every day
is a gift.
This gift, and the way you see people and see.
Yeah.
Because I guess in so much of my work, Bobby, I can't help thinking at times like, wow, my father would have got this. Like he would have been.
Yeah.
Where so much of my work is a lonely effort in that I create something from nothing all the time.
Yeah.
And many projects we've done, even my staff, they laugh at the initial idea. Like, hey, what if we did this? Whoa, what? What? And I push through.
Yeah.
And I've had things that didn't work out, but a lot of it does. And when I see fathers and sons, I mean parents and kids, but I feel a lot when I see fathers and sons. I've never felt envy in my life. I don't. But I do get excited. And when Joe said, would you come meet my dad?
Yeah.
I got excited because I wanted to see these two people.
Yeah.
When I was one of my songs, we didn't do it the other night. We ran out of time. Called Sea Myth. Mm-hmm. Was like a hit, and it came from my father when I was a kid saying, "I'll be your father for a while, and then you'll have to be mine."
Yeah.
And 8 or 9 years old, like what?
Yeah.
And then growing up, and when he got sick, trying to push this man to live, mm-hmm. and realizing, yeah, you're my son.
Yes.
And the beauty of it is, my mother got to live 85 great years because she allowed all these foster kids to bother her comfort. She would say it all the time. If I get comfortable, I'll be dead at 65. But these people were bothering her, and she had to keep up with what they were doing and learn again. And the beauty of it is, so your son gains this very special friend in you, and you will have trouble getting old because he's just going to bother you. and I think of the relationships I've known in my life, I often think friendship is overrated sometimes, in the sense that people throw the word around, and there are so many friendships of convenience, guys you drink with, or even guys you work with. But there are a lot of people in my life that I've created with that I don't even like that much, or they don't even like me that much. And it doesn't really matter. What matters is we create.
Yeah.
And I looked at my guitar player of 20 years. Like, this was June, just before we came back, we did a show, and I looked at him and I said, wow, we've done like 2,000 shows together. That's more than making babies. That's more than... Yeah. And we made all these songs. Yeah. And I don't even think you like me, do you? He said, no. And I said, well, it doesn't really... but the beauty of it is when it's in blood. Yeah. I don't know why, but there's a magic in this relationship. And push it. If I could say from the outside, push it. There's things this man can do that you don't even know yet.
You know what, Todd? When I think of your dad, and I think of my son and all my children, I would say you are your best version of your dad, as Joe is the best version of me, or any of my children. And you see that as a parent. You see that and say, wow, that's like me, but a better version.
Yeah, it's neat. And I think as our sexuality develops and humanity comes to terms with the fact that I believe there's probably 100 sexes, we grew up in a very limited, this idea of a man and a woman, that's the only way it can be. And whether or not you grow as human beings is not important. What's most important is you maintain this relationship and this image. And when I see people do it and do it well, I'm thrilled for them. But I've seen a lot of families where that's not the case, and where people suffer through for the sake of, and I don't have an answer, for the sake of. And I think as we grow in our understanding of love is a science, and we should be learning this from grade school. We don't. Our educational system builds houses from the roof down. You learn science and stuff. You don't even know what friendship is, and these are serious things. Yeah. You have to develop what friendship is, what love is, what's democracy in your daily life, before we even talk about the history of whatever. But I think what I see young people doing, and especially in my home, taking in a lot of foster kids who are picking up pieces of people. And I say to kids all the time, you can construct your own dad. You can choose pieces of people that you admire, respect. And very rarely will you find the whole package is really worth emulating. Right. Like, maybe this guy works hard and the rest of him, he's a mean son of a bitch. Well, that's okay. If you got your wheelbarrow out, grab that little piece and construct your dad.
Wow. I love that.
Right. And for the 70-80% of the people on the planet that are not in homes with both parents, I believe they need to believe that. Otherwise, they feel, all these inferior things that hurt them for the rest of their lives. But it's okay to construct your dad, and it's okay to have 5 dads. Sure, in my opinion. Yeah. Because each of them is carrying something good, I believe. So,
Todd, one of the things that strikes me is so true that you say, for youngsters in our education, we don't teach that. We don't teach friendship. We don't teach love. Something that even as adults, I rarely see people talk about or understand is contribution. I mean, it's a basic human need. We wouldn't exist as a species without contributing to one another. That's how we thrive.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. I call it emotional accounting. I say to my family all the time, have you looked at the the bank account in your friendships? Are you being fair? Have you given? And I don't mean that means whatever you give me, I have to give you kind of thing, but are you being fair?
Mm.
And if you're taking too much,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a cardinal sin. It's just something that can be corrected with
Yeah.
some awareness.
Yes.
I don't understand why worldwide diaries, journals are not compulsory. Like this would cure, it'd drop suicide. So many things would happen if we only said to young people, you got to summarize your day. I'm not going to tell you if it's good or bad, but
Yeah.
you got to summarize it. Wow, imagine that from an early age, learning how to, instead of waiting for someone else to tell you if you're good or bad,
You reflect.
you reflect. And I mean,
You've done this your whole life.
right, as a performer, you have to survive.
Yeah.
Because I've had nights where everybody thinks I'm great, and I know to myself, no, I wasn't. That was cheap. I did what I could to make them happy, but I didn't. And other nights, I've pushed new material and not been received so well.
Yeah.
But I'm my own friend and say,
That
that
was
was
good.
tough, but good job. You
Wow.
pushed the lines. And my son's 14, and every report card,
Yeah.
I make him write me a report. And I don't comment a single thing. I just say, subject by subject, please tell me
Wow.
what you got, whether it was good or not.
Wow.
And he's very fair. Every report card he says it's all the teacher's fault. Like I'm perfect.
That reminds me, I'll tell you, that reminds me of a teacher I had at Bishop Hannon. I think it was my sophomore or junior year. It was Mr. Connick, and the class was human anatomy. He was the only teacher I ever had that at the end of the semester, he'd say, "What grade do you deserve?"
Really?
Yeah. Now, for myself, I was a good student, not A, but I said, "Mr. Connick, I deserve an A." He goes, "Really, Pop? Tell me why." And I would talk all about human anatomy. He gave me an A.
All right.
And I was probably a B minus student. So maybe your son has something to say about that. I want you to sing more for me, Todd. Would you sing?
Sure. Let's see. I don't know why I'm thinking about when my nephew died. My nephew committed suicide 10 years ago.
Yeah.
He was like my son. And I was new at this. Like, well, what is suicide? All this stuff. And his name was James, James Thomas. And my sister said, would you sing? I flew home from Thailand.
Yeah.
And everyone was a mess,
Sure.
the family. So we're trying to put this all together. And she said, well, you sing Sweet Baby James. And I said, oh my God, can I get through that? That's going to be tough. And James Taylor plays unbelievable guitar. If you're a guitar player, like it's difficult stuff to play.
Yeah.
So I had to sing it a cappella.
Yeah.
And I have a cold. There is a young cowboy, he lives on the range. His horse and his cattle are his only companions. He works in the saddle and he sleeps in the canyons, waiting for summer, his pastures to call. And as the moon rises, he sits by his fire, thinking about women and glasses of beer, closing his eyes as the doggies retire. He sings out a song which is soft, but it's clear, as if maybe someone could hear. So good night, you moonlight ladies, rock-a-bye, sweet baby James. Sweet greens and blues are the colors I choose. Won't you let me go down in my dreams? And a rock-a-bye, sweet baby James.
Wow.
For JT, that was his birthday yesterday.
Wow, man. That is awesome, Todd.
I saw James Taylor about a month ago up at Bethel Woods. You like James Taylor?
Yeah.
My dad had this group I was telling you.
Yeah.
And we're singing all these old spirituals and stuff. And he would get forced into listening to new music. New music, he called it. Mm-hmm. He had me listening to like Eddie Arnold, Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash, boy, you got to sing Johnny Cash.
Now, do you do some Johnny Cash?
Coming around the bend, I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when, but I'm stuck in Folsom Prison. Time keeps dragging on. When I hear that drag coming, I hang my... And the coolest line in a song, right?
Yeah.
But I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die.
Yeah.
When I hear that train a-coming, I hang my head and cry. So we're doing these shows, and he's getting the Vietnam CO guys telling him, Mr. Lavelle, you got to open up. There's all this cool music. And this was the end of the 60s.
Wow. And
Joe, if you could understand the feeling at that time, the hippies were hurt. It had failed in their feeling. It didn't work. When in fact they were right about a lot of things, I think. And along comes these singer-songwriters, like looking at their own navels, saying, screw it. I can only tell you what I feel.
Yeah.
Cat Stevens. And then this kid from North Carolina who graduates high school and commits himself to an asylum. He thinks he's nuts. And his father's the dean of North Carolina Medical School. Family of success. He's a total washout. And he makes friends with the lady across the hall and thinks she understands the world. And her name was Suzanne. And he writes this song. Just yesterday morning, they let me know you were gone. Suzanne, the plans they made put an end to you. I woke up this morning and I wrote down this song. I just can't remember who to send it to. Oh, I've seen fire and I've seen rain. I've seen sunny days that I thought would never end. I've seen lonely times when I could not find a friend. But I always thought that I'd see you again. And this song changed history.
Yeah.
Everybody said, wait. How about me? Look inside. James Taylor.
Yeah.
And then Cat Stevens. And then James Taylor had this friend she was writing songs on Tin Pan Alley.
Yeah.
16 years old. She wrote Locomotion. Yeah. Everybody's doing. And a nasal sound, Joe.
Yeah.
And curly hair.
Yeah.
Not good looking. Big nose. And James Taylor says his first album's a hit. And he says, I won't put out my second album until you put hers out. And her name was Carole King. Tapestry. And that album, Brooklyn. She wrote it in Brooklyn.
Wow.
And that album. Anyway, so my father, his whole world was just blown apart. And now we have to do Fire and Rain. And we have to do You've Got a Friend. And we have to do...
Yes.
Yeah, anyway.
And for our listeners, my son Joe is coordinating all this for us, and he's right here with us. Yeah,
I want to thank Joe. And if you like this podcast, it's because of me, Todd Lavelle. Thank you. And if you don't like this podcast, it's because of Bobby and Joe Adcroft.
Hey, Todd, let me ask you, now the Cat Stevens stuff.
Oh, don't even start that.
Oh, you do a little bit of that or no?
Joe's already tired.
Oh, no, man, I love it.
No.
How about the Cats in the Cradle?
Child arrived
just the other day. He came to the world in the usual way, but there were planes to catch and bills to pay.
He learned to walk
while I was away, and he was walking before I knew it. And as he grew, he said, I'm gonna be like you, Dad. You know I'm gonna be like you. And the cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon.
Little boy blue and the man in the moon.
When you're coming home, Dad, I don't know when.
But we'll get together then. To this day, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has an award every year for people who give in music. Yeah. It's called the Harry Chapin Award.
Is that right?
Yeah, and the name of that song.
Man, you ought to get that award.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Bobby. Really, thank you, folks, for listening.
Todd.
And if you like this podcast, you owe me two things. One is do your own podcast. I'd like to hear your story. Two, please listen to the Adcroft podcast as it continues.
And three, if you have a gift, develop a skill and get better at it.
Your father gets it. Your father gets it.
Yeah, I do, baby. Todd, man, that was awesome. Thank you,
you.
brother.
Thank you.